घर खरीदना ना इमोशनल डिसीजन होता है.
Yeah.
तो I totally get that. And in fact, when I made a video on whether you should buy a house or rent a house. And सबसे बड़ा comment was, अंकुर अगर हम घर नहीं खरीदेंगे ना तो हमारी शादी नहीं होगी.
Hi, welcome to Blinkit Pitstop. Today's episode is very special. We are here with Ankur Warikoo. I'm sure that you already know of Ankur, but if you don't, he's a very inspirational and somebody that is able to give you very, very good life advice. His latest book, Make Epic Money, is now on Blinkit. You can order it now, get it in 10 minutes and read it in 2 hours and 10 minutes. So with that, let's talk to Ankur and hear from him about his views on life and everything else.
Relationship with money, how was it growing?
Try to articulate.
हाँ यार, तो एक तो बहुत बहुत बड़ा चेंज आया है. तो ग्रोइंग अप हमारे पास कभी पैसा था ही नहीं. ये वो होता ना कि कभी होता है फिर चला जाता है, ये सब ये परपेचुअली नहीं था. वेरी हम्बल बैकग्राउंड. डैड फार्मा इंडस्ट्री में सेल्स एंड मार्केटिंग जॉब में थे. मॉम लोकल स्कूल की प्राइमरी स्कूल टीचर थी. तो और कभी ना कभी किसी ना किसी टाइप का कर्ज चलता ही रहता था. कभी कोई क्रेडिट कार्ड हो गया, कोई पर्सनल लोन हो गया, कोई होम लोन हो गया, कुछ ये हो गया, वो हो गया. सो आई रिमेंबर डिस्टिंक्टली ग्रोइंग अप ऑलमोस्ट हेटिंग मनी. एक नफरत सी थी कि यार इसी की वजह से ज़िंदगी की सारी प्रॉब्लम्स हैं, यही फसाद की जड़ है. अगर जिस दिन पैसा आ जाएगा सब खत्म हो जाएगा, सब खुशियाँ ही खुशियाँ होंगी. तो एक चीज़ जो मैंने रियलाइज़ करी है, एंड दिस इज़ ओनली ऑफ कोर्स आफ्टर लिविंग सो मेनी ईयर्स, कि जब आपके पास पैसा नहीं होता है तो दो पाथ इमर्ज होते हैं. एक तो कि आप ज़िंदगी भर पैसे के पीछे भागते रहोगे, या आप पैसे को ठोकर मार दोगे कि ऑलमोस्ट लाइक एफ यू, आई डोंट केयर अबाउट यू. आई डोंट नो वाई पीपल चूज आइदर ऑफ द टू, बट आई वेंट इन टू द एफ यू मोड, विच वॉज लाइक कि पैसे को ठोकर मारना है, पैसा कुछ नहीं है, आई विल बी बिगर दैट मनी. But because of that, the biggest mistake I made upon realization is I never respected money for the longest time. क्योंकि पैसा बनाना सीख गया था कि यार इतनी पढ़ाई करी है, इतनी अकल है, इतनी मेहनत कर सकते हैं कि पैसे की कभी कमी नहीं होगी. इन द सेंस कभी लानत नहीं आएगी कि सड़कों पे पहुंच गए या कुछ ऐसा हो गया. I never really looked at it as a way of gaining freedom over my time, my life. Which came very late in life. Like अब मुझे पैसे की अहमियत समझ में आती है. So today I'm a lot wiser. I don't run after money still, but I really enjoy money for what it can do, which for me is giving freedom over my time. We earn. I don't know where to spend that money. I have full control over my time, and I absolutely love where things are. And I think जितनी मेहनत हम पैसा कमाने के लिए करते हैं, अगर हम उतनी मेहनत पैसा हम कैसे अपनी ज़िंदगी उससे इम्प्रूव कर सकते हैं उस पर करें, then life would be very, very different for most of us, certainly for me.
Nice. So what do you do with the extra time that the money gives you?
Yeah, I have conversations with very interesting people. I meet a lot of people. We travel a lot as a family, so we spend a lot of time. Last year, for example, I was counting this. We traveled for about 133 days.
Nice.
And we were just out 1/3 of the year, doing whatever we had to do and going wherever we had to be. When I'm home, I'm reading, I'm writing, I'm reflecting, a lot of time on my hands, and generally just spending time with myself, doing things that I would always want to do.
Nice.
Yeah. How was your money equation growing up?
I think somewhat of a similar journey. Like scarcity drives that mindset of like actually lusting after it for a while.
Yeah.
Right. And then with a moderate amount of success, you start then questioning whether that is the fulfillment journey that you're on.
True.
And I think for me, I don't think that I really ever thought that much about money, even growing up with scarcity. Certainly didn't like the idea of that having a hold over me, and like also when I saw it in other people's behavior, that how इतना ज़्यादा फोकस होता था पैसे पे कि पैसा बनाना है. मतलब I think I sort of ended up detaching from that at certain point of time. But again, I also feel that there is always a bias which creeps in once you have a certain amount of money, that you can look back and like try to frame the narrative in a very different way. I think there was a point of time where when I lived my life abroad, where basically you didn't have any sort of backup. You knew that you could not be helped out of there. I was living in France for a while, then I lived in States for a while. And both of those places were the early stage of your career where you're actually short on money.
Correct.
Right? But there is nowhere to go. Right? You don't have an ecosystem of friends to borrow. You don't have a family to say, ki, "Acha yaar, matlab, I'm stuck." And I think more than anything else, that taught me just financial discipline. Right? Ki kuch galtiyan karke, kuch seekh ke, ki yaar financial discipline, so that what are the big do's and don'ts, and like you create a heuristic around money.
Correct.
And then it was just peaceful for me that, okay, it is not something that I actually think about in my life. And I have mind space to think about whether I'm happy as a person and not whether it is related to money.
Correct.
And I think I'm still on that journey somewhere. Right.
It's like money is a nice, happy byproduct, but not the main driver.
Money is basically beyond a certain point. It stopped mattering.
Correct.
Right? Which is again that comfort ki uska to koi ant bhi nahi hota, right? You can crave as many things as you want, right? But I think for me, just that early financial discipline, right? Like I hated the fact that I was in debt after school, right? And I think you also have alluded to that, right?
Yeah.
And that to me was like a stress factor because it took away that freedom. So even when I started Grofers, I was in debt because I was still paying off those loans. And then not having a salary, that really felt like, it's crimping my style.
Exactly.
So so since then, like once got some success, the first thing that I did was
paid off the loans,
right? But what is yours? What is the vice?
I think it's travel. It's just travel. We don't think twice before spending obnoxiously on travel, and then tennis events. So both my wife and I, we play tennis. We love tennis, and we really like watching tennis all across the world. And it is an expensive sport to watch. तो मेरे स्टेडियम इतने छोटे होते हैं, लाइक 10-12 हज़ार स्टेडियम ही है. मतलब तुमने इतना बड़ा बिलियन पीपल वाला इवेंट बना दिया है, 12,000 लोग फाइनल देख सकते हैं. तो ऑफ कोर्स द
Which was the last one that you saw?
Australian Open.
जो अभी हुआ था.
It was such an incredible match. Such an incredible one.
So I never bought a house, by the way.
Oh, you're on rent?
Yeah.
Oh, I so love this. Logic बताओ हमें.
मतलब it doesn't make sense.
I 100% agree.
Right? If I have the money to buy a house, like उसका जो interest है, because I don't have like any black money, right? So the interest of that supports a much more incredible lifestyle.
Absolutely. Right? Absolutely. And I wish people did that math. Like मैंने किताब में एक पूरा सेक्शन है जिसमें लिखा है कि घर खरीदना ना इमोशनल डिसीजन होता है.
Yeah.
So I totally get that. And in fact, when I made a video on whether you should buy a house or rent a house. And सबसे बड़ा comment was, अंकुर अगर हम घर नहीं खरीदेंगे ना तो हमारी शादी नहीं होगी. क्योंकि मैं लड़का हूँ और लड़की वाले देख रहे हैं कि भैया एक घर वाला तो लड़का होना ही चाहिए. लाइक इट्स सच अ इंपॉर्टेंट पॉइंट, आई कैन नॉट डिसरिगार्ड दैट. लेकिन मेरा काम था तुम्हें सिर्फ फाइनेंशियल डिसीजन बताना, इमोशनल तो तुम्हें अपना ही फिगर आउट करना पड़ेगा. बट जस्ट फाइनेंशियली जस्ट डजंट मेक सेंस, जस्ट डजंट. एंड पर्टिकुलरली इन अ प्लेस लाइक गुड़गांव और मोस्ट ऑफ द बिग सिटीज़ नाउ इन द कंट्री, रेंटल यील्ड कुछ भी नहीं है. तुम 1-1.5% मैक्सिमम 2% पे घर किराए पे ले सकते हो. आलीशान सा घर होगा. तुम्हारा वो रेंट भी अगर तुम बिजनेस में हो तो वो एक्सपेंस बन जाएगा. एंड यू आर जस्ट सेव्ड विथ सो मच ऑफ कैपिटल एलोकेशन दैट इज अननेसेसरी.
एंड how much fight do people think they have to, like how much do you think people have to fight at home to make this point to their parents?
You know what, the best thing is if I get an email saying, मेरे माँ बाप तो बोल रहे थे कि जिस दिन नौकरी लगी उसके अगले दिन तुम होम लोन लेके घर खरीद लो. एंड देन मैंने उनको आपका वीडियो दिखाया तो वो बोल रहे हैं ठीक है बाद में खरीद सकते हो. तो ठीक है, दैट्स अ विन. मैं ये नहीं बोल रहा कि घर कभी मत खरीदना, लेकिन कम से कम अपने 20s में तुम मत खरीदो. मतलब तुम्हें पता भी नहीं है तुम कहाँ काम कर रहे होगे, तुम्हें पता भी नहीं है कि तुम इसी घर के साइज़ में रहोगे, इसी कॉलोनी में रहोगे. तो देयर आर सो मेनी थिंग्स दैट विल जस्ट बाइंड यू एंड चेन यू डाउन. why do you want to curb that freedom? Which is, goes back to the same thing कि अगर कोई भी चीज़ तुम्हें जकड़ ले, that's like the worst use of your money, not the best use of your money.
Yeah. What do you think is the other things that people end up doing, especially in our society and our culture, which don't make sense?
I think the big mistake in general that people make is कि अगर मैंने कोई चीज़ खरीदी है वो एक एसेट बन गया है. नहीं, ownership is not asset. Asset means it makes money for you. If it doesn't make money for you, it's not an asset. That recognition is very important. तो लोग गाड़ियाँ खरीदते बोलते ये तो मेरा एसेट है क्योंकि मैं चलाऊंगा फिर सेकंड हैंड बेच दूंगा. नहीं भाई, मतलब डिप्रिसिएशन हो चुका है, मेंटेनेंस हो चुका है, पेट्रोल हो चुका है, पार्किंग हो चुका है, ड्राइवर हो चुका है, तुमने इस पर बेइंतहा पैसा खर्च किया है. अगर पैसा है तो प्लीज़ करो क्योंकि उसी लिए कमाया, लेकिन अगर नहीं है तो रो पिट के तो मत करो ये बोलने के लिए कि मेरे पास ये एसेट है. Same thing with, say, a phone. Same thing with flashy clothes or watches or whatnot. But I think the big mistake that most people in their 20s tend to make is spending money to show others that they have money.
Yeah.
Which
By
is
status.
It's like वो status game जितना तुम खेलोगे उतना ही तुम अंदर धंसते ही रहोगे. And I also feel that it's a habit very hard to get out of. Because then when you have more money, you don't stop playing it, you play the game even bigger.
Yeah.
And that is something that I would love for people to be cautioned against. कि पैसा खर्च करो, अपनी खुशी के लिए खर्च करो, अपने परिवार के लिए खर्च करो, अपने हेल्थ के लिए खर्च करो, but don't spend it trying to impress people there.
When you talk about this rational use of money, and I think you're like also talking about that's a mistake of people doing that throughout their lives. How many percentage of people do you think actually end up being rational with their money?
Not a lot, but I think the awareness of what is a rational and irrational decision is far more important. That percentage, at least I like to believe, is increasing. So it may not be that they are not making irrational decisions at all, क्योंकि वो तो, as you pointed out, वो नहीं हो सकता. Like that thing will never completely go away. लेकिन पता है कि यार ये एक irrational decision है, ये एक rational decision है, and मेरा goal है irrational decisions के percentage को कम करते रहना. Eliminate नहीं हो सकता. It's the same thing जैसे स्टार्टअप की दुनिया में होता है ना कि यार गलतियाँ तो हर एक स्टार्टअप भी करेगा, इन्वेस्टर भी करेगा. But your few wins, if they're big enough, can just overcompensate for everything that you have done as a mistake. So your goal is not to not make mistakes, but to make lesser. And that's the same thing that I would say. Ki just be mindful of where you spend your time, where you spend your money, where you spend your attention. जितना तुम इसके बारे में माइंडफुल रहोगे, गलतियाँ कम करोगे. जितना तुम हवा में बहते रहोगे कि मैं एक आंधी में पॉलीथीन बैग हूँ, तो फिर तो आंधी तुम्हें कहीं भी ले जाएगी और तुम वहीं लैंड कर जाओगे, तुम्हें लगेगा कि वही ज़िंदगी है. बट नीड नॉट बी. एंड 20s में ये बहुत ज़्यादा ऑफकोर्स होता है. हम सब इसी फेज से गुजरे हैं. आई थिंक द वंस हु take something away from that decade are the ones who were mindful of how they spent that decade, not the fact that they didn't make any mistakes.
So you alluded to startups and like investing, right? Ki the startup investing is basically that lottery wala game. Yeah, one big hit will compensate for, and everybody likes to believe that they will spot
that one.
That one, right? So how do you think about it? Like when you are putting your money, right? When you're putting your money to create those assets, right? How much do you rationally put into something which is extremely high risk like startups versus... Because I think there's also an expectation from you especially that, because you're a proponent of the overall ecosystem, that you would get a lot of people asking you to invest in them, and that lends them credibility.
Yeah, what I realized, and this was one of those mistakes that I made, Alvinder. I became a venture funded founder in 2014, and क्योंकि तुम इस कुएं में होते हो तो तुम्हें लगता है यही पूरी दुनिया है, और तुम्हें लगता है कि जो लोग म्यूचुअल फंड खरीदते हैं वो बेवकूफ़ है, क्योंकि यहाँ स्टार्टअप्स का एकदम गोल्ड माइन बिछा हुआ है, एंड पीपल आर मेकिंग ऑल ऑफ दीज गज़िलियन डॉलर्स, एंड यूनिकॉर्न्स बन रहे हैं लेफ्ट राइट एंड सेंटर, एंड पीपल गेट लाइक 400x 100x ऑफ देयर मनी एंड सो ऑन. सो यू विल डू दैट, एंड आई डिड द सेम थिंग, एंड वेरी क्विकली इन आई थिंक अबाउट 3 years or so realized it's a complete lottery, and I am the worst lottery player, worst at all. I think in those 3 years made some 14-15 investments, and nearly all of them had gone bust. One of them made me nearly 40 times my money, and that was complete luck. Zero insight and intellect, and nearly no power of mind to have driven that. So then I was like very clear कि यार ये this is nearly satta. So either you play the index game, which is what I would say Kunal Shah is playing, सब में डाल दो, and then you're playing the startup index game, or you play a slightly different game, which is what I play today. I was like, I'm not going to come in early. तो ये नहीं है कि unless I love the founder or the founder is known to me, but I'm not going to do any angel, I'm not going to do any pre-seed and so on. I'll come with the first institutional round. And that's like saying कि तुम IIMs जाओगे तो जिसको भी McKinsey ने शॉर्ट लिस्ट किया है उसको तुम नौकरी दे दो क्योंकि कहीं से वो छटे हुए आए हुए हैं. तो first institutional round will be where I would bet and then I will ride that curve. And I have to offer something out there. But that still is extremely risky. So I'll not give it more than 20% of my allocation. तो आज मेरा जो portfolio है, it's nearly 40% public markets in India, about 30% public markets in the US, about 20% is startup, and about 10%, which is hovering around the 10%, is crypto. And so I have quote unquote 10% play money, that's my crypto. I have 20% high risk, which is my startups. And then in the Indian and the US stock market, it's a very, very portfolio based approach. कोई stock नहीं खरीदा हुआ है मैंने, मुझे कुछ नहीं पता है कि कौन सा stock खरीदना चाहिए नहीं खरीदना चाहिए. Just portfolio investing, riding on the experts, giving them a fee, hopefully a low one, and just drive that. And it's working out very well. It's working out. I'm not very aggressive, तो मुझे 40% का अगर नहीं चाहिए. मैं बहुत खुश हूँ अगर मेरा 20-22% आ रहा है, बहुत बढ़िया है. अगर मेरा पैसा हर 3-3.5 साल दुगना हो रहा है, over a 15-year I'll sit on 1632x. That's more than I need.
Yeah, but I think there is a flashing light effect, right? Especially, I mean, I've seen this from the other side, right? I also became a venture funded founder, and then I didn't really ever invest because I have my claim to fame, at least with everybody else, is I've never traded a single share. I don't even have a trading account. Where
do you invest your money? How do you invest your money?
Well, I didn't have a lot of money till for a very long time. So I was just always like, I don't want to think about it.
Correct.
Like my life is the work that I'm doing.
Perfect.
So I will put all my energy over here, and I just want to make sure that I have money in the bank in case something goes bad.
Correct.
I'm not interested for that 10% extra return on that.
Correct.
I don't want to distract myself from what is my primary job and what is my primary calling.
Absolutely.
But I see this increasing a lot. Like a lot of people who are also younger, like in their 20s, they start investing in startups.
Yeah.
I've created this corpus. Mere paas abhi, I have a savings of 20 lakhs. And a lot of people now have that, right?
Yes.
Like salaries are going up. A lot of the skilled workers are getting a lot of money early.
Correct.
And because they see, okay, there is a startup success or there is a startup exit. I think, my friend is starting a startup. And I think it's a lot for the cachet that, I'm a angel investor.
Angel investor, LinkedIn के headline पे जाएगा.
Right. Like, how do you? I want to like just dissuade people from doing that.
That is, I would absolutely side by you on that. Like it's foolish. बहुत लोग ऐसे, क्योंकि मैं अपना as part of my content, I often speak about my portfolio, wherever I invested, so on, and I do then say कि मेरा startup investing है. तो लोग आते हैं, मेरे को भी startup में invest करना है. मतलब भाई 24-25 साल के हो, तुम्हें कोई idea नहीं है कि ये कैसा होता है. It's like a complete black box. कोई liquidity नहीं है. तुम पैसा डाल भी दोगे और शायद वो काम कर भी गया. तुम्हें जिस दिन पैसा चाहिए होगा उस दिन पैसा नहीं मिलेगा तुम्हें, क्योंकि दूसरे साइड पे खरीदार होना चाहिए. तो it's not something that you would play with your hard-earned money unless you have FU money and you're like, chalo, I have something to set aside. So don't think about that. I definitely dissuade people with any gamble money that there is. मेरे को लगता है कि 20s इतना brilliant time है ना, जहाँ अगर दिमाग भी ना लगाएं, आराम से पैसा बन सकता है. Because you starting so early, you have the power of time on your hands, and you don't have to take any risk at all. But as Warren Buffett famously said, no one wants to get rich slowly. तो वही होता है कि रातों रात अमीर बन जाए. मतलब कुछ तो पता है अल्विंदर और अंकुर वारिकू को जो किसी और को नहीं पता है. अगर पता चल जाएगा तो हम भी करोड़पति बन जाएंगे. नहीं है बहुत ऐसी गेम नहीं है. वेरी वेरी रेयर.
What is your view on people spending on marriage?
You know, it's funny you asked me this question. Saturday को मैं मिला था एक शख्स से and he's getting married. He's like, any tips for me? And I was like, don't spend on marriage. Don't spend on marriage. He's like, हम लाखों कई cases में करोड़ों रुपए खर्च कर रहे हैं. Like, can you imagine what that would do for just the two of you to start your life in a manner that is there? एक रात के लिए किसी random uncle auntie को खुश करने के लिए जो are non-entities in your life and you wouldn't even meet them day after. Like if I really could, I would be like, यार एक अच्छी सी पार्टी थ्रो करो अपने दोस्तों के साथ. अगर माँ बाप आपको थोड़ा खुश करना है तो थोड़ा इधर, बट दैट्स इट. लंबे लंबे फंक्शन सो ऑन सो. बट ऑफ कोर्स it's easy for me to say it, but I wish people didn't spend as much on pleasing others and celebrating yourself. Totally okay, but I am sure you don't want to celebrate with 600 people. you want to celebrate with 60. So do that.
Yeah. I mean, 60 probably also still looks like a very,
looks
very
like
large,
a lot.
number.
वो होता है ना कि काश चीज़ें महंगी ही होती, बट मतलब हमें it's crazy how people would save up for a marriage but not for their financial independence. Like their goal is, this morning itself मुझे किसी का ईमेल आया था कि मैं 28 साल की हूँ, मैं पिछले 1 साल से नौकरी नहीं कर रही हूँ, आई डोंट नो व्हाट टू डू विद लाइफ वगैरह वगैरह, मुझे शादी भी करनी है, उस शादी के लिए मुझे 20 लाख रुपए बचाने हैं. मैंने बोला व्हाट वर्ल्ड आर यू इन? मतलब तुम अभी खुद की नौकरी नहीं कर रही हो, खुद के कुछ पैसे नहीं है, और तुम्हारा फर्स्ट फाइनेंशियल गोल का एम है अपनी शादी के लिए 20 लाख रुपए बचाना. तुम खुद के लिए 20 लाख रुपए बचा लोगे तो शायद तुम्हें 10 साल काम नहीं करना पड़ेगा. हैव यू थॉट अबाउट दैट? बट नो, ऑफ कोर्स आई डोंट हैव दैट कन्वर्सेशन, बट इट्स do you have the same point of view?
Yeah. I mean,
marriage is a waste.
Of course, and
but not marriage is a waste. Sorry.
Yeah, marriage is great if you find the right person.
Yes, exactly. If you find the right one.
But I think spending on marriage is exactly what you said, right? And you have a platform. Maybe you can do something about like getting people
certainly. Like that gives me an idea. Like 5 things people spend money on that you shouldn't.
Yes.
I think that'll be a good one.
And I think in our cultural context, so I really feel that like marriages should be really, really high. Like I see this almost unquestioned, mindset that, शादी पे तो पैसे खर्च होने हैं. And parents also end up doing it. They don't end up thinking कि यार, if I just give this money to my kids rather than like मतलब
it will set them up for life.
Yeah.
Like वो इतना 1 साल या 2 साल की नौकरी में नहीं कमाएंगे जितना आप शादी में 1 हफ्ते में खर्च कर चुके हो.
Yeah.
It's just so ridiculous. What are the other things that you feel we shouldn't spend money on?
I feel we shouldn't spend money on. I think house, cars, these things. I think most of the luxuries that are well marketed to us, right? You end up not really enjoying them as much once you have it, right? I feel. And I like marketing in general, right? That I like the fact that, there is an excitement that's created for you to acquire that product.
Correct.
Right? Like, go and buy this.
Yeah.
And then you buy it and it is not as great as it's marketed, right? So the delta between, because I see that in our brand, right? We are one of those brands which actually has to do exactly what we say on the label.
Absolutely.
कि 10-minute delivery है तो 10-minute delivery कर रहे हैं, right? But then you have some of the things that sell on our platform, right? कि आप ये face cream लगाओ तो आप गोरे हो जाओगे, right? Now somebody buys that argument, right? And it's an insane argument and something that should also make you question कि यार if you put some scientific method to it, that bro, this is not going to happen.
Exactly.
Right? But these products sell that, and then how much of a delta they sell in their marketing to what they actually do, right? The higher that ratio is, right? Like the higher that delta is, I think that's where I start saying कि यार नहीं, मतलब इस पे तो पैसा खर्च करना बनता नहीं
बनता.
Right.
That's such a smart way of thinking about it. Yeah, it's like what is the likelihood of them actually delivering on that promise, and what could be the delta if they don't? Like it's just that could be. Is there a purchase that you're almost embarrassed to admit in public? Yeah, मैंने ये खरीदा था. I'll tell you mine, but no, I'll wait for yours.
I don't think so. Like I've not really ever spent obnoxious money on anything.
I wanna talk about the books category on Blinkit.
Yes.
बहुत unusual, unorthodox, quick service category है. Like मुझे तो नहीं लगता था कि किताब अभी 10 मिनट में चाहिए. लोग वैसे नहीं पढ़ते हैं इस देश में तो. What are the use cases for which books are being ordered on Blinkit?
Yeah, so the bigger ones were children's books, books for gifting. These are the two that with which we started.
Got it.
Right. Soon it became travel books, right?
Oh.
So like this book is extremely easy to read.
Got it.
Right.
Okay.
You can read it maybe on a plane ride from here to Bombay.
Yeah,
you will be able
right.
to finish the book.
Yes.
Right. So people when they were just getting ready for travel, ki acha, I have to go somewhere or I have to. In Gurgaon, it is whether you're going from Gurgaon to Delhi and you're going to sit in a cab, right? Maybe, you know, for a lot of the folks, it's ki, acha, maybe I can just read something. Today I don't feel like watching.
Very interesting.
Right. And so we see a lot of that easy to read, you know, that entire genre of what traditionally would be like paperbacks in the US, right? Correct. Paperback novels, correct. Detective novels, all of that stuff. That usually does very well. And we launched Test Prep only last week. And it's doing really, really well.
Really?
Yeah. Because test prep is again, right, like one of those.
But ज़्यादा उसमें क्या practice questions वाले की? हाँ, practice questions. ये नहीं कि curriculum वाला वाला.
नहीं, curriculum वाला नहीं. Yeah. So it's basically before the exam. Oh, that's so cool.
हाँ, practice questions. Yes.
Yeah, and that's a fairly significant part of that category. Yeah. Right. So अभी तो because of that board exams things, I think right now we went live with those categories.
Yeah. Which was the hardest category for you all to launch?
Hardest category for us to launch. I think fruits and vegetables in general is the hardest business that we do. Yeah. Right. I mean, imagine a supply chain कि यार वो पिछली रात को 6 बजे farm से शुरू होती है and then you have to get it to the customers. And it's extremely complicated. It touches so many of the sociological constructs in our society, right? Like we have to work with farmers on one end, right? And their requirements, it's almost like running a cooperative on that end, right? कि उनको पैसा भी रोज चाहिए, and you need to make sure that they have the money every day. Yeah. And there is a lot of variability कि आपको ये नहीं पता कि आज कितने cauliflower आएंगे इस गांव से, all the way to the end customer, so that they actually have a more predictable experience कि भाई मेरे store पे मुझे रोज cauliflower मिल जाते हैं. It's an incredibly tough business to build.
And the error rate cannot be high.
Yeah, the error rate
just can't be. Yeah. And by design, क्योंकि perishable है, and of course weather conditions इतनी impact करती हैं सब चीज़ों में, इसमें error rate एक
दुनिया में सब कुछ impact करता है, from farmer protests to you know धुंध से लेके कुछ भी हो गया, सब कुछ, right? I think because of the cold in north in January, the strawberries couldn't ripen. They need sunshine to ripen. Right. ठीक है, तो we were not able to get. The strawberries were white, right? So then we had to run a supply chain from Mahabalipuram to here, so that customers in north would get strawberries, because like people need strawberries.
And why do you think people are buying iPhones in 10 minutes?
So I think if you are an iPhone customer, I'm assuming you are an iPhone customer.
I am, but certainly not who wants it in 10 minutes. But go on.
I think it's kind of like, why not for people like you, right? कि यार if
अभी मिल रहा है तो मिल रहा है, ऐसा तो नहीं है कि ज़्यादा पैसे देने पड़ रहे हैं.
Yeah, you're not paying extra. Exactly. And you know, I'll get it in 10 minutes versus waiting for a day or you know more if you're ordering from like horizontal e-commerce platforms. Right. So whenever these are products which are fairly standardized, right, where there is no differentiation of one platform versus another, right? You're not worried about we'll sell a fake iPhone, of course, right? Yeah. So I think over there we just end up getting that demand which exists because those customers are anyways going to spend that money. I think the challenge for us is usually how to make it available in 10 minutes, right? Like how to
How do you even predict that something's like this going to happen, right? Because it's not even a frequently bought item. तो ऐसा भी नहीं है कि आप ये predict कर सकते हैं कि इस dark store से आने वाला है order. ये इससे आने वाला है.
So we did it because our internal mission statement was apples to apple. Like we will just do this.
Like,
so,
do you see at some point of time in the future, Arvinder, horizontal commerce and quick commerce just converging?
It already is to some extent, but not in an exactly same way. Like it's horizontal commerce offers something which is it offers a kind of selection and it offers a different use case for end customers. It fulfills a certain kind of need in their life, right? Quick commerce fulfills a different set of needs, right? If you want to, buy a chocolate today, horizontal commerce can't do anything for you, right? Quick commerce can, right? Similarly, you were quoting the example of Band-Aid earlier, right? If your kid is cut, horizontal commerce can't do anything for you, quick commerce can, right? If you need to pick out an obscure title of a book, right? Quick commerce can't do anything for you. That kind of selection can only be offered by horizontal. So I think they end up being different spaces. But of course, what we are seeing with a lot of the customers is, not a lot of, I think as, we are inherently seeing more and more urbanization, right? People's access to products, right? It is starting to change, right? You live in Faridabad, right? Your access to gourmet products, right, is probably much lower. Right? So, and the cost to offer that access, right, it is something that quick commerce is much better at solving today, in a way that it also works for you.
Exactly.
Right? You getting that thing 2 days from now also doesn't solve it.
Absolutely.
Right? So for some of these things, quick commerce is just going to become a very, very relevant use case, which is what we are seeing. And it's sort of growing into a very, very different direction than, I think, almost including us. I don't think any of us have predicted that this is the direction it would end up taking, because there was a lot of uncertainty around what it will evolve to, and it is still evolving. I think still it's fairly early days of, we're only in 15 cities. We'll how much it will evolve, we'll figure out.
Very interesting, man. Because I remember the horizontal commerce also made this shift कि लोग physical stores जाते थे, product experience करते थे, और फिर Amazon, Flipkart पे जाके उसको order करते थे. या तो क्योंकि वो सस्ता होता था, या वो available होता था, या size में मिलता था, blah blah blah. And now I'm imagining कि if I go on a horizontal commerce platform, look for something, but it's getting delivered, even if it's delivered tomorrow, will my default be to go on a Blinkit and to check if I can get it in 10 minutes?
It's for certain product categories, yes. I think that for us, a lot of whatever is not new supply is getting created from people who would like the iPhone. Like instead of buying from a Amazon or a Flipkart, you would end up buying it on Blinkit.
Right.
But what we are also finding is that the experiential part of the stores is something which cannot be replaced. Right. So you have certain categories where you just need touch and feel, and you need to experience the product. I think those categories we are not set up to solve, right? And because we are not horizontal commerce and we are not discounting and like really trying to make it attractive for customers to go try at a store and then come here, I don't think we're even looking to get that share onto quick commerce. I think because that will not work. That will not work for we will end up being much more of a platform for trusted brand sellers, all of this, which is a very, very different market than like horizontal commerce will end up being.
Correct. Fantastic.
But tell me a little bit about, so this is your third book.
This is my third book.
What's the experience of writing a book?
For me, it's, I would imagine, very different from how it would be for somebody who's actually writing a book, because this book is in some way written on its own through the content that has been created over years. So the exercise of writing a book is actually curating a book. It's not even writing one. तो ऐसा नहीं है कि मुझे first principles बैठ के सोचना पड़ता है कि क्या किया वो, क्योंकि इतने टाइम से ये content बने ही जा रहा है. So you just need somebody to curate it and then edit it and get it into a structure. So it's fairly fast. I end up writing it in say 3 months, editing at best 1 month, then it just goes into production after a few back and forth, which is why the frequency of a year. Otherwise, though, it will be very hard to even pull that off. So,
but I see like in your videos and like in what's in the book, it's almost as if you're like co-creating the book with the people that are also like engaging with you on your platform.
Totally. The feedback coming through, ये आपने cover किया, ये नहीं किया, ये अच्छे से explain किया, ये नहीं किया, and so on. So like people ask कि अगर आपके videos हैं तो किताब क्यों है? And ऐसे किताब का main purpose threefold है. एक तो it acts as a trust machinery in our culture, क्योंकि किताब निकलती है तो ज़्यादा अहमियत मिलती है, YouTube वीडियो को इतनी नहीं मिलेगी. दूसरा, it just becomes a comprehensive curated form of consumption in just one go. तो ये नहीं है कि ये वीडियो है, फिर वो वीडियो है, वो वीडियो है, एक ही में सब कुछ समाया हुआ है. And third, it becomes an artifact for a much longer period. It's not subject to any algorithm. So like you said, the first book continues to sell because it serves a certain purpose even after 3 years, while none of my 3 साल पुराने videos are getting as many views.
Got it.
So it just serves as an artifact in physical world. And all these three then have a meaningful existence.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you're creating so much content, you're doing your courses as well. What is it? Webveda,
yes.
Right? So when you go through you're going through this journey of like teaching and I would say like educating people on, let's say, even mental models, right? What makes you anxious?
Nothing, man.
That's a great place to be.
No, nothing. Generally nothing. I really, I'll be lying if I said, well, I'll just be trying to sound smart because you asked me, but nothing in my life makes me anxious. I'm at a spot where टेंशन नहीं है, genuinely कोई टेंशन नहीं है. एंड अगर है भी तो वो टेंशन इसलिए नहीं है कि होगा कि नहीं होगा, because you're just completely detached to what happens, and life has taught me that. But more about, will I be able to do a good job of that or not? But anxiety too is too strong a word in my life, so nahi hai.
Nice. No, that's a great place to be. That means you feel fairly fulfilled.
Absolutely.
All the time.
Like, great place to be. And
is there a place? Is there a point of time, or let's say a period where you thought that this is where it started moving in the direction of fulfillment?
Yeah, I think when and you've been through the same, and so have a lot of other startup founders. The journey of building something on your own is nearly not as glamorous as it's made to be. दूर से बहुत अच्छा लगता है, अरे शॉक टैंक, पैसे बन गए, लाइफ सेट नहीं, वो मतलब अभी तो शुरू हुई है, अभी तो फटने वाली है. तो building nearby was intensely hard. And when we went through our own challenges, when we had to lay off people, when we were running out of money, when we couldn't raise a new fund, all of that just led me to a lot of reflection. How the F did this even happen? ऐसा नहीं है कि जज्बात की कमी है या मेहनत की कमी है या capability की शायद हो सकती है, but ऐसा भी नहीं है कि गधे हैं. तो how did this happen? And that reflection, I think, got me a lot aware of, one, how the market runs by itself. What are the dynamics of it, the economics of it, of being an invested company as against a not invested company, the cost of growing and the pace of at what you're meant to grow or asked to grow or implicitly expected to grow at, so on and so forth. And I think the biggest lesson that drew from that is every individual inherently has their own pace of life. And जब तक वो frequency match नहीं करेगी with what you're actually doing, आपका कभी भी वो मोजो और feel natural वाला state ही नहीं आएगा. क्योंकि आप एक अलग frequency के इंसान है, आपको कोई और other frequency पे नचा रहा है या बोल रहा है या कर रहा है, and वो तालमेल कभी बैठेगा ही नहीं. So I think what I'm doing now is not, oh, I'm the smartest person or the most hardworking person or none of that. I'm just doing something that matches with my frequency of who I am as a person. And that is why I feel content. And I look at people who are just absolutely killing it. I wouldn't want their life. Like when I look at Elon Musk, it's like, I'm inspired by that dude, but I would never want to be him. I just don't want to be him. That's not my frequency. मैं इतना intense life जिंदगी में जीना ही नहीं चाहता, ना ही जी पाऊंगा. Like I'll suck at it. But I admire him and I love what he's doing, and I'm glad that there's somebody like him doing what he's doing. But no, it's ironical that you would never want to be him while still admiring him.
No, that's cool.
And that realization happened over a period of time, and it largely happened because you were in shit and you realized that something got you there.
Nice.
That was that.
What is the role of people around you in that journey, like family and?
Yeah, a lot, because I'm very glad that I'm surrounded by people who have been with me for a really long time. So they've seen me from a time when I was quote unquote nothing. So they've always brought me back to that self. कि तू दुनिया के लिए कुछ और होगा, लेकिन हमारे लिए तू वही गधा है जो तू पहले था. And that reminder of who I was really helped, because I think the world has its way of taking you in a different direction जो आप नहीं हो, and you then begin to believe नहीं हम ये बन सकते हैं, और शायद बन भी सकते हो, but no, if you're not inherently that, then it'll always be a mismatch. So that role was immense. My wife, for sure, my very close set of friends, and a very small one at that. But a lot of I find peace spending time with myself, and I have no qualms doing that. Now your main question ki extra time ka karte kya ho? Like, I love spending time with myself. I'm totally okay. I don't get bored of myself. I don't run away from my thoughts. I am able to embrace them. So I can really sit and contemplate a lot without anyone. But of course, everyone helps.
Do you think there is a part of the journey where you can have that amount of love for yourself and not the money?
Yes. And I think I've gotten to that point. Like, I think we have more money than we need.
No, of course. I'm saying, can somebody who doesn't have that money, do you think this journey is doable if you...
Yeah.
Starting with the first question.
Very hard. I think it'll be very hard. Unless you've covered all base, it becomes really hard to compare. वो ये होता है ना कि जैसे, and I'm just being me right now, इतने सारे founders हैं जिनको मैं बोलता हूँ, अल्विंदर भाई मत रेस कर, मत कर, ये इन्वेस्टेबल बिजनेस नहीं है, वेंचर फ्रेंडली बिजनेस नहीं है, अगर होगा भी तो इतना वक्त लगेगा ना कि तेरे बीच में ही मर जाएगी, मत कर. लेकिन वो तब भी करेंगे. क्यों? क्योंकि उन्होंने कभी किया नहीं है. और मुझे पता है कि मुझे भी अगर कोई बोलता है ना कि मत रेस कर, तो मैं बोलता नहीं यार, एक बार तो करना है, लाइक देखना है, चखना है. एंड इट जस्ट बिकम्स रियली हार्ड टू से नो, और टू say that I'm going to reject a side that I've never experienced. So I feel having money allows you to see what money does for you and not, which not having money will never get you to. नहीं तो ऐसा हमेशा लगेगा यार, पता नहीं जिंदगी कैसी होती अगर पैसा होता, शायद हम अलग होते, who knows. इसीलिए ज़्यादा फिलोसफी उन्हीं लोगों से आती है जिनके पास पैसा होता है, या वो होते हैं जो एकदम गिव अप मार के चले गए कि नहीं यार, मतलब चाहिए ही नहीं, because I chased it and it didn't work out. So I often tell all people, at least in their 20s, ki don't try and figure your life out, because you won't be able to. You haven't had as much experience. You're way too young. You're still trying to make things work. It doesn't matter whether you have clarity. In fact, clarity 20s में बहुत मुश्किल है आना. What you need is direction. आपको ये नहीं पता होना चाहिए कि जहाँ मैं जा रहा हूँ वो बिल्कुल सही बात है. You will never know that. All you need to know is मैं जा कहाँ रहा हूँ. So that if that doesn't work out, you can backtrack and come to that point and take another path. तो मैप पे डेस्टिनेशन मत डालो, लेकिन मैप होना ज़रूरी है. मैप ही नहीं होगा तो फिर तो तुम डायरेक्शन लेस हो, फिर तो दुनिया ही तुम्हें कहीं ले जाएगी, और फिर you will not have any sense of where to go, what to do, and where you are.
I think I have a lot of respect for artists, because I feel that this rubric, they totally violate it.
Totally.
Right. That they will not have a direction, they will not have a map. They also don't seem to, a lot of them don't even care about the money or the things that money brings.
Yeah.
Right. I think they're very wired differently.
They're just wired differently, and it's fascinating to look at that.
Yeah. And I think this is why, like, I really, whenever I get an opportunity, I really want to spend time with artists and like actually.
It's very interesting.
Because it's just like, ये आपकी दुनिया कौन सी है भाई? Like, मैंने तो आज तक ऐसे सोचा ही नहीं था. But I usually find that they are, if they are not tortured souls, they're usually like much happier with themselves than a lot of us are.
Yeah, a lot of us are. Yeah. Something works for them. Yeah. So true. So true. Do you consciously spend time or try to spend time with people who are outside of the startup world?
Almost exclusively.
Yeah? Oh, I love that. Yeah. Very few people are able to do that. Yeah, so congratulations if you do that as a discipline.
I think, also there are not a lot of people around here in the startup ecosystem, right? Like, and I feel that, just been very, very fortunate that just ended up being my ecosystem of like people who are not doing this.
Nice.
A lot of that was because, you know, my wife had that ecosystem, so I just ended up, you know, importing it.
Very nice.
But I think it was not a very conscious choice. It just so ended up happening. And I think over the years, that curiosity of, you know, who else is doing what, like what are they doing with their lives, and like being able to sort of compare and see and look at different people's way of working and mental models and how they think about life in general, not just like professional life. I think that's fairly fascinating.
It is, man. It is.
And I'm very fortunate that I have this sort of span of, you know, like I am on this end of the spectrum in terms of living in a city, and my parents come from an entirely different end of the spectrum, you know, from the village and like their entire family. Right. So I end up seeing this massive contrast of mindsets in this. I think that just, more than anything else, I think it's a great way to keep yourself, you know, consciously aware of sort of what you do and how you behave.
Exactly. So true. So true. Fantastic. Love it.